Following the tragedy of the fall, Adam and Eve find themselves faced with terrifying consequences. For many readers, this is the exact chapter of Genesis where a subtle doubt begins to creep into our own hearts. We look at the immediate aftermath of the first sin and find ourselves wondering, if God is truly so good, how could He allow a world with this much suffering? Why didn't He just prevent the tragedy entirely? Centuries ago, St. Thomas Aquinas directly addressed this heavy question. He famously wrote, "God allows evils to happen in order to bring a greater good." If that is true, then what is the magnificent greater good that could possibly justify the weight of human suffering? To find the answer, we have to look closer at Genesis chapter 3, because hidden directly inside the curses and the consequences of the fall, God reveals His goodness in 3 surprising acts of mercy. Immediately after the fracture of trust, physical suffering enters the world as an undeniable reality. God turns to mankind and outlines the consequences of their choice. "In pain you shall bring forth children. Cursed is the ground because of you. In toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread until you return to the ground." It sounds devastating for mankind. Had not God made 3 acts of mercy before revealing this consequence, then humanity would have collapsed under the weight of despair. Let's take a look at the 3 acts of mercy God supplied mankind with to be able to bear their consequences. God speaks directly to the serpent and issues the Protoevangelium, the very first promise about a coming Redeemer. This Redeemer, as we know, is Jesus Christ, would be the offspring born of a woman, Mary. In the prophecy, God reveals to whom belongs the final victory. "I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will strike your head, and you will strike his heel." Look closely at the visual language used here. The heel is a symbol of the lower parts of our humanity, our physical, mortal nature. The head, however, symbolizes authority and the seat of power. God is foretelling a profound mystery. The serpent will attack the heel, symbolizing the physical humanity of Christ, causing Him to suffer physical pain on the cross. But through that very act of suffering, Christ, the offspring of the woman, would deliver a definite mortal blow to the head of the serpent's kingdom. Though the enemy inflicts a temporary wound on humanity, God promises from the very beginning that the ultimate victory belongs to the new Adam, Jesus Christ, and the new Eve, Mary. The second act of mercy happens right in the midst of mankind's deep embarrassment. Having realized they are naked and exposed, Adam and Eve are drowning in the shame of their isolation. How does God respond in their failure? He doesn't leave them shivering without consolation in their shame. "And the Lord God made garments of skin for the man and for his wife, and clothed them." In their failure and broken heart, God makes use of the opportunity to reveal the depths of His infinite compassion. He responds not with severity, but with tenderness. The final act of mercy is perhaps the most misunderstood of the three, the expulsion from paradise. Then the Lord God said, "See, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil, and now he might reach out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever." Therefore the Lord God sent him forth from the Garden of Eden. Notice the deep goodness of God hidden in this consequence. If Adam and Eve had remained in the garden and eaten from the tree of life after the fall, they would have immortalized their brokenness. They would have lived forever, trapped in a state of perpetual distrust, fear, and eternal distance from their Creator. The banishment from Eden was not a malicious eviction designed to crush them. It was a severe mercy. God protected them from living forever in their wound. Physical death became the necessary boundary that would allow humanity to eventually be undone, healed, and recreated anew. Though painful, even the consequences are meant to work for our good. This brings us directly back to our overarching theme. In our lives, we often look at our suffering and deep personal failures, and we let our distrust in God grow. We are tempted to think that because things hurt, God must be severe or distant. But Genesis 3 proves the exact opposite. From the very beginning, God saw that the risk of allowing human freedom and the subsequent risk of losing paradise was entirely worth it. Why? Because His goodness is so vast that He knew He could bring an even greater value, a deeper wisdom, and a more radiant redemption out of our mess than if we had never suffered at all. When we fall into sin, fear, and hiding, God does not abandon us to the cycle. He uses the very consequences of our mistakes to break our illusion of self-reliance, gently drawing us back to the realization that He alone can be trusted. Even as they are exiled from Eden, God covers Adam and Eve in mercy and promises them an ultimate victory. But as humanity steps out into the wilderness, a new paranoia takes over. Instead of trusting God to protect them, they start building stone walls, forging weapons, and using dark technology to become their own gods. What happens when a society tries to manufacture its own security without the Creator? Hit the subscribe button and join us in part 4 to see the devastating fallout of Cain, Lamech, the Nephilim, and Babel.